Yes, the big 5 employers of Night City. A simple data shard, but hardly an accurate one. Arasaka, Militech, Biotechnica, Kangtao, MegaCorp, your perks. Cyberware slapped on your body without consent but with the company logo. Heavy machine guns wrapped under your Christmas tree that you bought for yourself with the employee discount. 6 paid vacation days you can waste at a bar. How about a 2nd-tier membership with Trauma Team for the small cost of being owned by the company for 50 years? Not a big deal, to be honest. You won't live that long anyway. Instead of me regurgitating propaganda, I think we should actually send some poor soul inside the belly of the beast. Mr. House called up NV Ranger & Co. He's looking for us to get an idea as to what it would be like to work for Night City's MegaCorps in 2077. There was only one guy for the job, our barely informed local lifeform, Bill. NV Ranger & Co. doesn't do hourly work weeks, Christmas trees, or vacation days, let alone paid ones. In this situation, you are Bill. He's an aspect of you, like a biochip plugged into your dome. This means you have been dropped into Night City as none other than yourself. Megacorps in this city are always hiring, so their staff knows they can always be replaced. No one is safe, even the mighty Saburo Arasaka. We've gone ahead and forged you a flexible, unimpressive, but ultimately believable resume that will slot you into a low to mid-level position at any company. By the end of your internship odyssey with Special Agent Bill, we'll know which Megacorp is the best to work for and which is the worst. Maybe. Here you come strolling into Night City, you're feeling yourself. I bet you want to make a change, huh? Bill, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and have no idea what you're getting into. Take up something honorable and decent like being a medical guy, so you try your luck out with Trauma Team. They're small as far as Megacorps go, but like you're used to telling yourself, it's not just size that matters. Much of their strength comes from their partnerships with other, often much larger companies. Big dogs like Arasaka, Militech, and Kangtao give their employees memberships to Trauma Team. Depending on the tier you are provided with, maybe it will even save your life. There's no maybe about the crippling medical debt you'll be in afterwards, though. This isn't even dystopian fiction at this point, it's just real-life lore accurate. Kinda weird how that works. The companies provide you with insurance that'll do just enough to keep you alive, bury you in debt, and force you to work for them as long as possible to pay it off. Neat little trick they got going on. Not really your problem as a Trauma Team employee, though don't worry, working for these guys will give you a whole set of other inescapable issues. If you ever run into these EMTs with SMGs, you'll notice they're a grumpy bunch, but with good reason. Trauma Team operates with 6-person squads, so you have 2 pilots, 2 medtechs, and 2 security specialists. Bill applies for the EMT position, but his experience as a lifeguard at his local pool wasn't impressing these military-trained cybernetics. Instead, he qualified for security specialist. Bill spent months getting dropped into places like Northside, Pacifica, and other hot zones where some platinum tool bag had gotten themselves shot. They probably deserved it. He was a cheerful fella before the job, but routine exposure to death started to make him numb. He would appear on the scene of the crime like an alcoholic Santa riding Rudolph the Death Machine reindeer, the Zetatech Atlas AV, but instead of cookies, he was looking for jelly unfilled donuts splattered on the pavement. He started this job with Chick-fil-A levels of customer service, but a few months in and he was already acting like a DMV worker. On the bright side, he really got to know his crew. Things were tough at first. They all acted like a bunch of hard asses because that's exactly what they were. Something about the nature of the job, intense missions, never-ending hours, disappointing pay, these conditions bonded them. For the first time, Bill thought he'd found something close to family in Night City. They got a routine call, had to go save some corpo executive who had gotten into gambling debt with the Tiger Claws. They left him beaten and broken in an alley. When they arrived to treat him, they quickly realized this guy wasn't hurt at all. He was completely faking it. Before they had a chance to figure out what was going on, they were trapped in an ambush. Bill was shot and dropped to the ground. He was alive, but he couldn't move. He lay there watching as all of his closest friends were slaughtered, one by one. Overhearing the Corpo and the ambushers afterwards, he realized that the Corpo actually did get into debt with the Tiger Claws. That much was true, but he repaid that debt by setting up a Trauma Team squad. The Tiger Claws would clep their gear, nab the AV, and sell it all on the black market. Bill would eventually get an exfil after the scene was clear. Company wasn't about to risk valuable assets on a dead squad. They also took the Corpo who was still faking it laying on the ground. Doesn't matter what the medical screenings showed, the customer is always right. Bill would get a couple of weeks of leave before he found himself in a corporate-based therapy session under Trauma Team and then tossed back into a new squad. On his very first call back, he gets sent out into Kabuki. Upon arrival, he finds that the client is that very same corpo who sold his last team out and got all of his friends zeroed. Guess his gambling finally caught up with him though, because this time he really was bleeding out. Bill could barely help himself. He set into the motion of his training, took position and guarded as his EMTs saved the skonk's life. He had to hold back the urge to let loose on the corpo rat, but he knew the trouble it would cause, not just for himself, but all of his new squad mates. He returned to me, ranking his time with Trauma Team in P tier for PTSD. Side note, with a slice of fourth wall breaking, do yourself a favor and read the Trauma Team comic, as long as you're prepared to feel sad. Bill's next job fair was with the titans of fuel, Petrochem and Sovoil, both who rely on licensing from Biotechnica to create the fossil fuel replacement, Chu-2. This is what much of the world runs on now, and it's made by Biotechnica's synthetic crop, Triticum vulgaris megasuavis. I am just sure that the Soviet Union loves that their government created an organization in Sovoil, which then privatized, outgrew them, and essentially replaced them on the world stage. Sovoil now represents the people of the Soviet Union, whether they like it or not. This makes them an enormously influential megacorp. On the other hand, Petrochem is Dallas, Texas-based, but not to the US what Sovoil is to the Soviet Union. For one, that's because the US doesn't exist anymore. The fractal new United States, or NUSA, is more intertwined with Militech. So which one would be better to work for? Bill wasn't really looking for the pressure of working for a company like Sovoil. He assumed Petrochem might be a chill gig. He thought he could just head out into the field and do what he knows best as a farmer boy. Petrochem was not looking for a fool with a hoe. At this point, much of their farming was likely automated or mechanized. Bill chose to sign a contract with Petrochem though. They realized his resume was a lie after he tried to drink Chu-2 when he heard something about it being a sugary alcohol. He nearly went blind, but after he recovered, the company higher-ups thought he might have a knack for lying his way into bad situations, so they put him in corporate espionage. No one told poor Bill that these two companies have a long and strained relationship from being direct competitors. They had even been major components in a corporate war fought over the South China Sea. Sovoil would emerge victoriously as they left looking like one of those ducks in the Dawn dish soap commercials, baptized in oil spills. Now, Bill found himself leading a mission into Soviet territory where he had to start a little bit of political instability. He stumbled into what he thought was a bar and ordered a Chu-2 on the rocks. Before you know it, Dagestan and Chechnya were at each other's throats. Bill was the crazy straw that finally broke the communist camel's back. Like dominoes, each Soviet state fell into one another and out of the USSR. Bill thought he was starting a bar fight. Instead, he collapsed the Soviet Union. The instability of this region is a well-known weakness for Sovoil. It's assumed that if the Soviet Union were to fall apart, so too would Sovoil. Both companies, however, depend on Biotechnica for licensing and on other corps to actually buy their product. This makes them easily leveraged. Beyond that, their assets are massive fields of synthetic crops, easy targets to attack. Imagine your job is to defend a dry wheat field from a group of well-armed arsonists. It does sound kind of fun to be on the attacking side though. But even if it's not another megacorp, it's a climate disaster wiping them out. A drought recently destroyed a petrochem yield in South America, and what little survived was quickly seized by Brazil and Colombia to feed their starving people. The kicker is that these two companies are some of the largest perpetrators of destructive actions taxing the environment, leading to more of these natural disasters that hurt their crop. They beat each other and they beat themselves. This is terrible for job security. So Bill decided Petrochem earned a C-tier ranking for corporate espionage, and Sovoil got the D for don't invest in this company. Bill was feeling a little guilty after toppling the Soviet Union, so he decided these really weren't the gigs for him. He moved up the hierarchy to Biotechnica. He could tell right away that this Italian-based megacorp didn't quite have the staff of the previous two, but it dwarfed them in influence, being the largest biotech company in the world. Their fingers were in genetic engineering, pharmaceuticals, food production, and well beyond. All Foods is actually just a subsidiary of Biotechnica, so Bill used his crafty negotiation skills to get his salary in Burrito XXL's Power Pork and Easy Beef. Surely, they could manage this given their massive annual income from licensing to companies like Petrochem and Sovoil. Hopefully no one tells them what Bill just did to Sovoil. He was really excited to get to work with this company though. They're at the forefront of de-extinction, where they can bring back plant and animal species that went the way of the dodo. Bill proudly helped reintroduce the North American beaver. It's not his fault no one told him they weren't supposed to go to Australia. Now Sydney has a damn problem. His boss made him take all 6 of his paid vacation days when they reintroduced the swift fox and eastern cottontail. When Bill was allowed back into the office, he was immediately sent to a Biotechnica research facility in Paris. Excited to try out some wine and bread, he was blindsided when a potato knocked him upside the head. He was then ferociously pelted by a barrage of vegetables. He walked in front of the research facility without noticing a massive protest was taking place. Responsible for the potato pelting was the Crimson Harvest, a group of disgruntled farmers and smaller-scale agricultural entrepreneurs. He managed to nibble his way through to the other side and open a dialogue with one of the members named Danton Robespierre. He explained to Bill that when they tried to peacefully protest without the food fight, Biotechnica responded by jacking up prices and releasing a virus that wiped out any crops not made in their own labs. Now the farmers struggled to feed themselves, let alone produce a harvest worth selling. Did Biotechnica expect them to just roll over and die? Well, they definitely didn't expect their new employee to go speak to the opposition. Danton would show reports to Bill that would explain how the biotech giant hides fatal side effects of their pharmaceuticals and had no problem killing employees and civilians alike to keep that information concealed. What's a little forced human experimentation in the face of all of this? Biotechnica wants to appear as this altruistic company looking to undo damage done to the earth. Meanwhile, they feed directly into companies like Petrochem and Sovoil, if you can see the issue there. They want to be seen as healers, but they provide addictive meds that rot your mind before eventually killing you. Biotechnica's agents spied closely as Bill spoke to Danton. They noticed how he looked to express sympathy rather than dismissing this anti-corpo radical. They decided to enact their Operation Kill Bill. They had also heard rumors of what Bill had done to Sovoil at this point, so they knew a frontal assault was far too risky. They decided to clone Bill and eventually replace him. Danton noticed the corpo agents watching though. Bill knew he lost his company's trust that day, but they also lost his. He could smell the evil but delicious sauce this Italian MegaCorp was stirring up. Bill and Danton kidnapped the clone with perfect stealth and stashed him somewhere in the Badlands where no one would find him or even dare go looking. If Bill tossed out his moral compass, he wouldn't have been in their crosshairs. He conceded that working for Biotechnica could be quite a bit better than some of the other companies, so he gave them a B for bananas. Bill was sick of the easy beef and the power pork. He wanted to chew on the real meat of this corporate nonsense, the big dogs, Arasaka, Militech, and Kang Tao. If you thought Sovoil sounded scary, representing a crumbling USSR, these 3 are in a league of their own. Arasaka is the MegaCorp equivalent of Japan, Militech is the same for America, just as Kang Tao is to China. To varying degrees, they have become intertwined with or outsize their own governments. This is paramount to understand when approaching them for employment. They define legality rather than follow regulation. Bill was hired by Arasaka, and within a week he was taking stims to keep up with his 18-hour days and got 3 of his coworkers killed by the end of the month. Rookie numbers, to be honest. To cope with the stress and guilt, he had to take sleeping meds. He was able to snooze just long enough to keep him alive in time for his next promotion. Life was moving fast. Before he knew it, he had a luxury apartment in Charter Hill. He was just high enough to see North Oak, but never too high to forget Santo Domingo down below. One slip up, one poorly timed mistake, and that was a wrap. His whole life could fall out from under him like a drugged up penguin on thin ice, leopard seals circling below. Other companies had been tough, but this was nothing like before. He didn't have a single friend. All of his coworkers wanted to outcompete him, and he didn't have time to make chooms outside of work. Bill eventually made his way to a management position, which earned him 5 whole minutes a day for bathroom breaks. He held it in, bladder of iron and booty of burrito, and spent that time digging into Arasaka's dirty laundry instead. He found some documents discussing Saburo's early life. The corporate god was once a young fighter pilot in World War II, but he was horribly maimed. His injuries forced him out of the conflict and ultimately out of control. He had to sit by while his country was defeated, nuked, and shamed on the world stage. He watched the Emperor of Japan, once regarded as a deity, fall from grace. Saburo was moments away from ending it all as he slid a blade between his own ribs when he realized he could still take back control. All he needed to do was leverage his father's company. Bill had taken his company at face value. Arasaka looked like a titan with 3 big branches: banking, manufacturing, and security. But that was only the storefront. The real product was information. The main focus of the security branch Saburo had created and Bill was now working under was collecting that information, just like the Silicon Valley tech companies of today. Arasaka contracts out their bleeding-edge security teams to other MegaCorps. Once they're in, they protect, but they also gain access to vital networks with priceless details. They soak up the deets like a nosy sponge, and the business hiring them thinks they're getting the best security possible. Little do they know, they just let the fox into the henhouse. At this point, they maintain a vast network of control, that thing that Saburo so dearly lacked in World War II. Police forces, security teams, private militaries, they operate banking for other corps, own the means of production. Bill's potty breaks opened his eyes. He was a pawn in a much larger game, and the competition that he was in with his coworkers was just a microcosm of the competition his company was in with Militech and Kangtao. Bill had heard of the Corpo War between Petrochem and Sovoil, but to be honest, that was child's play compared to what happened between Saka and Militech 50 to 60 years ago. He was able to access incredibly confidential information on that conflict, and it blew his mind as much as it blew Arasaka HQ. The corporate throwdown started with much smaller companies, Sino and Otech. Forget them, they're irrelevant, but they hired Saka and Militech to represent them in this conflict. They were like 2 kids fighting in the park over their favorite swing. Then they ran and got their dads to settle the beef, but by the time things got heated, the kids regretted the whole thing. The dads didn't care about the swings, monkey bars, or the slides. They were just looking to throw hands. Orbital dogfights, Hong Kong turned to ash, Rio flattened in hours, and bioplagues handed out to cities like Costco samples. These 2 megacorps made much of the world look less inhabitable than the dump on the outskirts of Night City, and the global community was terrified. But the American dad would settle the fight by pulling out a gun in the park. The radioactive cherry was put on top when Militech sent in a squad of mercs and nuked Arasaka towers, leading to the deaths of over 500,000 people. That was in 2023, and after a lot of rebuilding, things are bigger, badder, and even more tense now. You think Saburo doesn't notice the parallel. An American megacorp nuked his Japanese megacorp, leading to the death of his firstborn son, and shamed Arasaka on the world stage. Militech, with their hands behind their back, left Saka to take the blame. This is relevant to being employed by these 2 and now Kangtao having entered the mix. They're all on top of this geopolitical information and arms race, and we're long overdue for another corporate war. Militech is less company, more Noosa's rabid pit bull, officially on the leash, but everyone knows who's really dragging who down the block. And Kangtao, they're the new kid on that block with 1 million employees and 1 trillion smart guns, less worried about tradition, more worried about making sure every bullet comes with Bluetooth and a subscription plan. Leading the charge of these megacorps aren't simple money mines, but often megalomaniacal control freaks trying to dominate this park. Make sure everything is in their favor, so when trouble comes again, and it will, they're ready for World War IV. Bill ranked his time among the big dogs in F tier. F for fissile material.
Fissile material.
Bill has been traumatized by Trauma Team, petrified by Petrochem, and socked by Saka. He toppled a nation, turned an extinct species into an invasive one, and killed enough co-workers to earn Arasaka Employee of the Month. What was left? There are plenty of other megacorps out there, of course, but not enough time for Bill to suffer through all of them in one operation at least. He had caught wind of a company that might give him a chance to finally do some good. He found it kind of hard to find a recruiter though, or even an office to approach. Their public numbers were strange, somewhere between 8,000 and 120,000 employees. What does that even mean? Valued at 250 to 750 billion? Even their accountants don't know. They were shrouded in secrecy. Even when he asked other megacorp representatives about them, they bit their tongue and got nervous. He eventually got an interview. MegaCorp sent a company car with windows tinted from the inside, and then he found himself in a room with a nice woman. He got the job quickly, he was surprised, and decided to ask some follow-up questions. Bill asked her, "So, how many employees do you guys actually have?" She replied, "Yes." Right. What about the salary? A good one, she said, smiling. All right, then when can I start? When you can stop. Night Corp was directly involved in Night City's development and public works. Bill got to working with orphanages across town, helping out the youth, and eventually made his way to his true passion, trains. NCART turned out to be under Night Corp's umbrella, so Bill spent some time getting their system functioning. That's why you can use it today, thanks to Bill and his team of crackhead engineers. His heart longed for something bigger though. He wanted a project to get lost in. Night Corp, amazed with his success on the NCART, offered Bill a position working on their intercontinental maglev restoration project. He would have a chance to lead the way in reconnecting many of the cities across North America. He couldn't have been more excited. His job search was finally starting to pay off. Bill felt at home with Night Corp. Sure, Bill knew they were involved in some election fraud, but what MegaCorp wasn't lobbying at least one government. He was working for a company and having a decent impact on the world around him. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was closer than he ever had before. Even better was the lean 80-hour work week they offered, leaving him plenty of time to work his second job. Months went by, and Bill worked away on the maglev, overseeing its design and managing the whole project. They got closer and closer to connecting Chicago to Night City via high-speed rail. Bill was so focused, he would get home from work and not even remember what happened that day. At first, he chopped it up to being busy, or maybe it was the long-term side effects from the stims he was hooked on at Arasaka. He thought about inviting a coworker to go hang out at the bar and blow off some steam after a tough week. He opened his holo and went through his contacts, but then he realized he didn't have a coworker in there. In fact, he couldn't even think of anyone's name, not even a face came to mind. It was an off weekend, so he didn't have to go to work, but he couldn't even think of how he would get there. No people or places came to mind. He started panicking at this strange moment. Bill knew he must be having some sort of breakdown. He went to the bar alone to see if a drink could calm his nerves. It didn't, of course, but he did end up chatting to another patron. They bonded over something on the TV, hit it off great. Bill finally chillaxed at this point. Maybe all Bill needed was a bit of human connection. Then the new friend asked Bill, "So, where do you work?" Bill reflexively replied, "Yes." Put off a bit by this odd response, they chuckled and said, "Hey, as long as they pay you," forcing Bill to jump in again. "A good one." "Oh, they pay you good. Well, that's more than I can say," jokingly. They asked, "When can I start?" Bill returned, "When you can stop," as he stared off into the void, emotionless. The potential friend quickly paid their tab and vanished off into the crowds of Night City. Bill got home and couldn't understand what happened to him. The words slipped out of his mouth before he even had a chance to think, like someone else had taken control. In this moment of desperation, Bill called up Danton from the Crimson Harvest back in France. Bill figured if anyone knew something about corporate conspiracies, it was him. Danton did have some insight into the situation, but it was nothing concrete. He said recent leaks had pointed to the idea that Night Corp might be using artificial intelligence to brainwash their employees. It all made too much sense in Bill's head. This is exactly what was happening to him. Bill used his own money to fly Danton out, and the two of them crafted a plan. Danton would follow Bill to work and map out the route so they knew how to get to the work site. Then, on another off weekend, they would travel out to that spot in the Badlands where Bill stashed his clone. Bill would then record his time at work for brain dances, and they would then force the clone to watch the brain dances for hours and hours on end, effectively brainwashing the clone. When it was time to set things into motion, Danton would tie Bill up to break the cycle of mindlessly going to work, and they would escape Night City for good. At least, that's what the shard Bill left in his apartment told me. I haven't seen him in over a year now, but I have seen his clone, walking to work, walking home, barely noticing me. Sometimes he says a sentence or two, sometimes nothing at all. If I don't answer, he doesn't seem to mind. But the more I think about it, the more I notice it everywhere. The same blank faces, the same lifeless stares, the same people walking endlessly without purpose. They don't know when to start, they don't know when to stop. Maybe Night Corp didn't just get Bill, maybe they got all of us. How many employees do they really have? Yes,